For your safety, you're not staying here tonight. The locks are changed, hand over the key, and walk away.
At 1 a.m., my dill dumped my suitcase. 911 played my call. The inspector knocked, and she went pale. At 1 in the morning, my daughter-in-law set my suitcase on the porch. I woke to wheels scraping concrete. Slow, deliberate, like she didn't care if I heard. When I reached the front door, she was already turning back inside. The porch light buzzed above me. The air was 42 degrees. My suitcase sat upright, zipper half open, my cardigan sleeve hanging out like a hand. I stood there in my nightgown, shivering. She stopped in the doorway and faced me as if this were a scheduled appointment. Her voice was calm, practiced. "For your safety, I think it's best if you stay somewhere else tonight." She held out a folded sheet of regular printer paper. Across the top, a residential lease agreement. My name was spelled wrong. The date at the bottom was 2 weeks old. The ink smudged under my thumb. I looked up at her. "I need my key." She didn't blink. "The locks have already been changed." I tested the knob. It turned, then stopped, hard, on a heavier click than I remembered. A new deadbolt, a sound I didn't recognize. My hand shook, but my voice stayed level as I pulled my phone from my robe pocket and dialed. The dispatcher answered on the second ring, and I gave my address, my name, what was happening, while my daughter-in-law stood 5 feet away and watched me do it. I called 911 from my own porch. If you've ever been locked out of your own life by someone who said they were helping, you're not alone. This is what I did. It didn't start with a suitcase on the porch. It started 3 years earlier, with a conversation that sounded reasonable at the time. My son and his wife needed a place to stay. They'd sold their condo to pay off debt. The plan was 6 months, maybe a year. I had the space. My husband had been gone for 5 years by then, and the house felt too big. I thought it would be nice to have the company. "We'll help with the bills, Mom," my son said, "and you won't have to worry about the yard anymore." My daughter-in-law smiled when he said it. She had a way of making everything sound like it was for my benefit. I gave her my spare key on the second day. She put it on her keychain right beside her car key and a little leather tassel my son had bought her for Christmas. I remember thinking it looked official, like she was family now, like she belonged. She kept it on her keychain like a trophy. The first year was fine. They paid rent, not much, but enough to cover groceries. My daughter-in-law cooked dinner most nights. She was good at it. My son seemed happy. I didn't want to make waves. I told myself it was temporary. Then the bills started piling up on the kitchen counter. The mortgage was under my name, but the gas bill, the electric bill, even the property tax notice would sit there for days unopened. "I'm organizing things for you," she said one afternoon, stacking envelopes into neat little piles. "You shouldn't have to deal with all this paperwork." I had handled my own finances my entire life. I'd been a bookkeeper for 30 years. I knew how to balance an account, but she made it sound like I was overwhelmed, like needing help was the natural next step. One afternoon, she asked if she could set up automatic payments for the utilities. "It'll be easier, Mom," she said. "You won't have to think about it." She needed my bank login just to link the accounts, she said. I gave it to her. I watched her type it into her laptop. She made a note on her phone. She said she'd send me a confirmation email. I never got the email. 2 weeks later, I tried to log into my account to check my balance. The password didn't work. I tried again. Still nothing. I called the bank. The representative told me the password had been changed the previous Friday, March 3rd, at 11:14 p.m. I hadn't been on my computer at 11:14 p.m. I'd been asleep. My balance notifications stopped that week. After that, little things started feeling off in ways I couldn't quite name. I could still access my account if I went to the branch in person. I did that once. The teller was polite but confused. She asked why I didn't just reset the password online. I told her I'd tried. She printed out my statement anyway. I folded it into my purse and left. That was when I started noticing the deposits, small ones, $50 here, $100 there, always on the 1st of the month. My Social Security came in on the 3rd, my pension on the 10th. But these deposits had no label, just transfer from external account. I asked my son about it. "That's us, Mom," he said. "We're covering some of the bills. Don't worry about it." But the bills were already covered. The mortgage was paid. The utilities were paid. The deposits didn't match anything I owed. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. I just kept that printed statement in my nightstand drawer, like a bookmark in a chapter I wasn't ready to read yet. The mail was next. I'd always gotten my mail at the same time every day, around 2 in the afternoon. The mailman's name was Gene. He'd been on our route for 15 years. We used to wave at each other through the window, but suddenly I'd come downstairs at 2:30 and the mail would already be gone. "I grabbed it on my way in," my daughter-in-law said. "I'm organizing it for you. You've got so much junk mail." She'd hand me a small stack, a grocery store flyer, a credit card offer, nothing important, but I knew I was supposed to get more. I was waiting for a notice from the county recorder's office. I'd requested a copy of my deed, just to have on file. I'd sent the request in January. It was March. One afternoon, she left the house to run errands. I went into her room and told myself I was looking for a phone charger. I wasn't. I found the mail in her closet, a cardboard box tucked behind her winter coats. At least 30 envelopes inside, some opened, some not, most of them with my name on them. The envelope from the county recorder was on top. It was already open. The worst part wasn't the money or the mail. It was the way she talked about me when I wasn't there. I first noticed it at the grocery store. Mrs. Chen from 2 doors down saw me in the produce section. She smiled, but it was different, careful. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said. "Why?" "Oh, your daughter-in-law mentioned you'd been having some trouble," she said softly. "She said you needed a little extra help these days." I didn't know what she meant. I told her I was fine. She nodded, but she didn't look convinced. The next week, I saw her outside watering her roses. I walked over and asked if I could borrow her hose to water my front flower bed. Mine had a leak. She hesitated. "Let me check with your daughter-in-law first," she said. "I don't want to overstep." Mrs. Chen asked her if I could water plants. 2 weeks before the suitcase, I heard my daughter-in-law on the phone. It was 11 at night. I'd gotten up for water and stopped in the hallway when I saw light spilling from the crack of her door. Her laptop glow bled into the dark, a bright rectangle on the carpet. Her voice stayed low and even. "It's an informal lease," she said. I held my breath. She agreed when we moved in. "We've been here 3 years. We've been covering her bills." A pause. "No, there's no written agreement," she continued. "But she's been acting confused lately, forgetting things. I think it's time we formalize the arrangement." Another pause. "We'll handle it," she said. "I just wanted to know what our options were. Thanks." The laptop snapped shut. The light vanished. I went back to my room without the water. I sat on the edge of my bed and replayed the words "acting confused lately" until they stopped sounding like a sentence and started sounding like a plan. I started writing down everything she said. The notebook was small and blue, spiral bound. I wrote the date at the top, April 9th. Then I wrote what I'd heard while it was still fresh. I underlined informal lease and acting confused. I wrote the time too, 11:07 p.m., because I knew someday I'd need the exactness. The next morning, I took out the trash. Something light slipped from the bin and skidded across the floor. Crumpled invoice. I smoothed it against my palm. Secure Solutions, LLC work order hash 0413 229 date. April 3rd, install, grade 2 deadbolt, front door. Total $185. Paid in full April 3rd. 6 days before that phone call, my hands didn't shake. They went calm, the way they used to when a set of books didn't balance. I walked to the front door and looked closely at the hardware. New metal, clean screws, a faint ring where the old lock had sat for years. I turned the thumb turn and felt the heavier click. The sound wasn't just new, it was final. I folded the invoice and slid it into my pocket. Then I opened the notebook and wrote it down. Company, work order number, date, cost, what was installed. Underneath, I wrote one sentence. Installed before lease call. She'd been planning this for weeks. That afternoon, I waited at the kitchen table. When she came in, she poured iced tea like nothing was wrong. The ice cracked and settled. She didn't ask why I was sitting there. I kept my voice even. "What's this about a lease?" I asked. Her face didn't change. "I don't know what you mean," she said. "I heard you last night," I said. "You said we had an informal lease." She wiped condensation from her fingers with a dish towel, slow as a metronome. "I was asking a legal question, Mom," she said. "Hypothetically, if we ever needed to help you with housing decisions." "What housing decisions?" I asked. "Assisted living, memory care," she said. "The doctor said we should start thinking ahead." The word doctor landed like a weight. "What doctor?" I asked. For a fraction of a second, her eyes flicked to the side. "Your doctor," she said. "At your last checkup. He mentioned you seemed forgetful." My last checkup had been in December. It was April now. Dr. Morrison had told me my blood pressure was perfect for my age. There was no doctor appointment. I didn't argue. I just looked at her until the lie sat heavy between us. Then she picked up her glass and walked past me without looking back. The next morning, I called Dr. Morrison's office myself. I kept my voice polite. I asked the receptionist to confirm the date of my last visit. She clicked a keyboard for a few seconds. "Mrs. Whitmore, your last appointment was December 14th, she said. "You don't have any visits after that." "Was there a note about memory issues?" I asked. "No, ma'am," she said. "Your chart says routine wellness, no concerns." I wrote December 14th in my notebook and underlined it once. Then I wrote, "No memory note." That night, sleep wouldn't come. Near midnight, I heard footsteps, then a faint mechanical whir. Paper feeding through rollers. A printer, 30 seconds, maybe less, and then silence. In the morning, a folded sheet waited on the kitchen counter like bait. I opened it. Residential lease agreement. My name was typed at the top, spelled wrong. The date at the bottom read March 26th, 2 weeks ago. A blank line waited for my signature. I had never signed it, but it was printed and ready. I took a photo of it with my phone, then folded it exactly the way she'd left it, and put it back in the same place. I didn't want her to know I'd touched it. I just wanted proof that it existed. 3 days later, she brought me another document. It was Sunday. I had the newspaper across my lap, the crossword half done. She sat in my husband's old armchair with a manila folder and slid one crisp sheet toward me. "Mom, I need you to sign this," she said. "What is it?" I asked. "Power of attorney," she said. "Just a precaution." I read enough to feel my stomach tighten. Before I answered her, I called my son into the room. He came in with his phone in his hand, eyes tired, already bracing for conflict. "What is this?" I asked him, tapping the header. He scanned it and shrugged like it was a grocery coupon. "It's just paperwork, Mom," he said. "Jen's trying to be prepared." "Prepared to do what?" I asked. "To sign for me while I'm still standing here?" He glanced at her, then back at me. "Nobody's trying to hurt you. he said, voice flat. Can we not make this a whole thing? Just sign it so we can move on. The words landed worse than hers, because they came from someone I'd raised. I watched the two of them, my son standing there, my daughter-in-law holding the folder, and I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't a misunderstanding between women. It was a decision they were making as a team. It named her as my durable power of attorney, financial and medical, and it was effective immediately upon my signature. I saw the list of powers in black and white: manage accounts, access records, sign contracts, handle real property. The language was broad on purpose. It didn't say help, it said authority. Immediately meant she wouldn't need any doctor, any judge, any proof. My signature alone would hand her my choices. I don't need this, I said. It would make things easier, she said. With the memory issues the doctor mentioned. I don't have memory issues, I said. And there was no doctor visit. Her smile thinned. Everyone your age should have a POA, she said. It's responsible. I slid the paper back toward her. I'm not signing it, I said. The air changed. She folded the form once, sharp, angry, and put it back into the folder. She stood and looked at me like I'd failed a test she wrote. Fine, she said. We'll do this another way. Then she left the room. A moment later, her bedroom door closed and the lock clicked. Final, deliberate. I sat there with my hands trembling, not from fear, from anger. I went to my room and opened the notebook. I wrote the date, April 12th. I wrote, POA presented, refused. Then I wrote her exact words. We'll do this another way. I underlined it twice. There were 5 days between that click and the porch. That's when I knew she'd force me out. I went to my room and opened the notebook. April 12th. POA form presented, refused to sign. Her exact words, we'll do this another way. I underlined it twice. Then I sat on my bed. My mind moved fast, but my body felt heavy. I had been tired for 3 years. Tired of being careful. Tired of wondering if I was imagining things. But I wasn't imagining this. I had the invoice. I had the dates. I had her words in blue ink. I needed more. The next morning, I started taking pictures. My phone was old, 5 years at least, but the camera still worked. I photographed the front door first. The new deadbolt was chrome, too shiny, too clean against the worn brass. I'd lived with for 20 years. I leaned close and snapped the scratches around the keyhole where a locksmith's tool had slipped. I checked the photo details the way I used to check ledger entries. April 13, 8:06 a.m. The time sat under the image like a witness who couldn't forget. I photographed my bedroom lock, then hers. Hers was newer, installed maybe a year ago. She could lock herself in. I couldn't lock her out. I photographed the mail spread on the counter, envelopes fanned out, my name and address visible, date stamps clear. Then I drove to the bank. 10 minutes. I sat in the parking lot with my hands on the steering wheel, listening to my own breath and the soft tick of my turn signal I'd left on by accident. I didn't know what speech to give. I just knew I needed documentation. Paper with a bank logo on it. Inside, the teller was young, hair in a neat bun. I asked for printed statements for the last 6 months. Do you want them mailed to your home? She asked. No, I said. I'll wait. 4 pages, double-sided, stapled at the corner. The paper felt warm when she slid it across the counter, like it had just been pulled from a machine that didn't care who was telling the truth. In my car, I flipped through them and found the deposits again. $50 on February 1st, $100 on March 1st, $75 on April 1st, all labeled transfer from external account. But my bills were paid. Mortgage, $847. Utilities, $213. Property tax, $156. The deposits didn't match anything I owed. They were creating a story on paper, making it look like they supported me, like I needed them, like I was already dependent. I took photos of the statements too, close enough to capture dates and labels, and saved everything into one album on my phone. My phone album became my legal file. That afternoon, I walked next door. Mrs. Chen was trimming the hedge along her driveway. The shears made a steady, metallic snip, 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 like someone cutting a thread you didn't know was holding you. She looked up when she saw me. Her smile was cautious, the same careful smile she'd worn in the grocery store. "Hi, Mrs. Chen," I said. "Oh, hello," she said. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine," I said. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" She set the shears down and wiped her hands on her jeans. Her eyes flicked toward my house. My daughter-in-law's car wasn't in the driveway. She was at work. "Of course," she said. I told her the truth, not all of it, just enough to be real. I told her I'd been locked out of my bank account. I told her my mail had been disappearing. I told her I'd found an invoice for a lock I never authorized. I told her I was afraid of what might happen next. Mrs. Chen's face changed while I spoke. The caution shifted into recognition, like she'd been waiting for me to say it out loud. "I saw something," she said slowly. "About a week ago. It was late. After midnight." I felt my throat tighten. "Our dog was sick," she went on. "I was up with him, and I looked out the window. Your daughter-in-law's car was in the driveway. The trunk was open. She was putting something inside." She swallowed. "A suitcase, I think." My breath caught. "Would you be willing to write that down?" I asked. "If I needed it?" Mrs. Chen looked at me, and her expression went firm, decided. "I'll testify if you need me," she said. When I went back home, I sat at the kitchen table and opened the voice recorder app on my phone. I had never used it before. The red button sat at the bottom of the screen like a small, simple promise. I pressed it and practiced what I would say if I had to call for help again. Calm, clear, credible. I said my name and my address. I said I was being pressured and isolated by my daughter-in-law. I said I owned the house. I said I had lived here for 32 years. I said I had not signed a lease. I said I had not authorized locks to be changed. I said I was 74 years old, and I was not confused. Then I stopped the recording and played it back. My voice sounded steady, factual, not frantic. I saved it as practice April 13th. I hoped I wouldn't need it, but I was ready if I did. The next day, I called a number I had written in my wallet weeks earlier, a legal aid hotline for seniors. A young woman answered with a kind voice. I told her facts only: locks, bank access, missing mail. The lease draft, the POA I refused. There was a pause on the line. "Did you call 911? She asked. "Yes," I said. When she locked me out. "Good," she said. "That's very important." She explained it in plain language. Even if someone waved a lease around, they couldn't just change locks and push you out without proper notice. It was illegal, a self-help eviction. Then she said the sentence that turned my stomach into something solid. "That recording is your proof," she said. She told me the 911 call created an official record: time, address, my statement, something that could be requested, preserved, subpoenaed if necessary. I wrote it down exactly. 911 recording == official record, can be subpoenaed. She gave me an elder law attorney's name and an emergency number, someone who handled quick motions when access had to be restored. I wrote the name. I wrote the number. My hand trembled, not from fear now, but from clarity. I had a plan. That evening, I didn't go inside the house to do it. I sat in my car instead, parked where the porch light couldn't shine on the windshield, and pulled up the City Housing Department website on my phone. Request an inspection, name, address, reason. I typed habitability concern. New locks installed without owner authorization. Possible illegal lockout. I checked the box for urgent review. I entered my phone number and email. Then I clicked submit. A confirmation page appeared. An inspector will contact you within 5 business days to schedule. I took a screenshot and saved it to the same album as the lock photos and bank statements. I filled out the form in my car. The night after I submitted the inspection request, I packed a bag, not the suitcase she'd set on the porch. I left that one visible, like a marker. I used an old duffel instead. Black canvas, broken zipper, my late husband's fishing bag. 3 days of clothes. My medications. Toothbrush, phone charger, the blue notebook. Printed bank statements, the locksmith invoice, and the deed to my house, the original, still in the county recorder envelope. Sliding it into the side pocket felt like sliding my own name back into place. It was almost midnight. From my daughter-in-law's room, I heard floorboards complain. A drawer open, then close. She was awake, restless, the kind of restlessness that comes before someone decides they're going to handle you. I waited for her bathroom door to shut. Water ran, then stopped. I carried the duffel downstairs with no lights on, stepping around the loose board near the second stair. In the kitchen, the refrigerator hummed. The house looked normal in the dark. My curtains, my table, my framed wedding photo, like nothing inside it was trying to erase me. At the back door, I used the old brass deadbolt. She hadn't changed that one yet. I'd made a quiet note of it weeks earlier, the way I used to note which invoices were paid and which weren't. Cold air met me in the yard. I crossed the grass to Mrs. Chen's fence and slipped through the gap by the lilac bush. I kept my head down like a teenager sneaking out after curfew, except I was 74 and I was leaving my own house. Her porch light was on, warm and steady. A moth circled it once and vanished into the dark. I knocked softly. She opened right away, saw the duffel, and didn't ask for an explanation. "Come in," she said. Inside smelled like jasmine tea and laundry detergent. Safe things. She locked the door with a decisive click, nodded at the couch, and said, "You can stay as long as you need." I sat down and set the duffel by my feet. Relief made my hands shake harder than fear ever had. I took out the notebook and put it on the coffee table, like a weapon I didn't have to swing. In the guest room, I lay awake, listening to a different house breathe. A water pipe ticked. A clock in the hallway chimed once. My mind kept trying to picture my front door, and that new deadbolt I didn't recognize. My son called 6 times. I didn't answer. The next morning, my phone buzzed again and again on Mrs. Chen's kitchen table. His name filled the screen like a demand. 7 o'clock, then 7:10, then 8, then 9. The calls came in waves, as if repetition could pull me back into compliance. On the 6th call, around noon, I answered. "Mom?" His voice was tight. In the background, I could hear my daughter-in-law, sharp, urgent, a low hiss of words I couldn't make out. "Where are you?" "I'm safe," I said. "Where? Your bed wasn't slept in. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "I'm staying with a friend." "You need to come home," he said. "We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "I'll come back when it's safe." A pause, then slow and careful. "Safe? Mom, you're not making sense." I took one breath. "I'm making perfect sense. She locked me out. She changed the locks. I called 911. He rushed in. "That's not what happened. You left. You were upset. She was keeping you safe." "I didn't leave," I said. "There's a recording." Silence, then smaller. "Mom, she's scared you'll fall. She says you've been forgetting things." "There was no doctor," I said. "No diagnosis, just a deadbolt and a suitcase." Another silence, long enough that my throat tightened for a different reason. I wanted him to say, "I'm coming to get you." I wanted him to say, "I believe you." Instead, he said, "I have to go." The call ended. Mrs. Chen stood in the doorway with the coffee pot and didn't say a word, just poured more like she could steady the room with it. That afternoon, I called the attorney the legal aid hotline had given me, David Brenner, Elder Law, Emergency Motions. "I need an emergency consult," I told his receptionist. "Illegal lockout, no lease. I'm the owner." I called 911. A few minutes later, a calm voice came on. "This is David Brenner." I gave him the facts: locks, mail interception, bank access, the forged lease, the POA I refused to sign, the 911 call, the inspection request, and Mrs. Chen as a witness. "Do you have documentation?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Photos, statements, the invoice, the deed." "Good," he said. "That 911 call is a timestamped third-party record. It's not your memory versus hers. It's a recording." I heard pen scratch on paper as he wrote. Then he said, "Make one more call today, Adult Protective Services. Not because you can't handle this, because they create another official report. Another date you didn't invent. It helps when someone is trying to paint you as confused." Another record she couldn't erase. He explained the next steps in a voice that stayed matter-of-fact, the way professionals sound when they've seen this before. "I'll file an emergency ex parte motion for access restoration and an anti-harassment order," he said. "If the court agrees you're vulnerable and there's immediate harm, they'll set a hearing within 72 hours. Your daughter-in-law will be served. If the judge orders you access, we can request a sheriff escort so you don't have to argue on your own porch." "Can she say I left voluntarily?" I asked. "She can say anything," he said. "But she can't erase a 911 timestamp." "Can you come in?" he asked. "Bring everything." Mrs. Chen drove me downtown. His office was near the courthouse, quiet, orderly, full of files and the smell of copier paper. It felt like the opposite of my kitchen table, where paperwork had become a weapon in someone else's hands. I laid my documents out on his desk like I was closing a month-end report. Notebook, statements, invoice, deed. He read the deed first. "This is your house," he said. "Yes." "No ownership stake for her," he said, already writing. "No deed transfer, no quitclaim." He asked for the timeline. I gave it clean and exact. April 3rd locksmith invoice. April 9th lease phone call. April 12th POA refusal. April 17th 1 a.m. lockout. April 18th 911. April 19th inspection request. He typed while I watched his fingers move, steady and practiced. The printer hummed. He slid the motion in front of me. My name as petitioner, her name as respondent, relief requested, immediate access, anti-harassment, expedited hearing. I signed. My hand didn't wobble. In a hallway outside his office, I made the APS call. Calm voice, name, address, illegal lockout, fear of financial exploitation. The caseworker asked a few questions, then gave me a reference number and said someone would follow up. I wrote the time and that number in my notebook. That night, I slept in Mrs. Chen's guest room with the duffel at the foot of the bed. I kept thinking about that printer sound I'd heard weeks earlier. Paper becoming proof without my consent. This time, paper was working for me. The next morning, my phone rang at 8:15. "Good news," Mr. Brenner said. The court accepted the filing and granted an expedited hearing. Friday morning, 9 o'clock. "Does she know?" I asked. "She'll be served today," he said. "The court doesn't argue. It schedules, it orders. She has to show up and explain herself." I sat up, staring at the pale rectangle of sun on the wall, my heartbeat steady for the first time in days. The clerk stamped it expedited. 2 hours later, a text from the city housing department lit my screen. "Inspection scheduled, Thursday, 2 p.m. The message said the inspector had already notified the occupant at my address, voicemail and email with a checklist, entry locks, bedroom access, habitability, occupancy records. I forwarded the screenshot to Mr. Brenner. He replied in minutes. Perfect. Inspector report strengthens your case. Mrs. Chen was scrambling eggs when I walked into the kitchen. Hearing Friday, I said. Inspector tomorrow. She smiled, small, real, warm. Then she's going to have a very bad week. I poured myself coffee and sat at the table. In my mind, I could already hear the sound of a clipboard tapping my front door frame. Neutral authority, not family drama. She was still telling herself I'd left voluntarily. She had no idea what was coming. Thursday afternoon, I sat in Mrs. Chen's living room and waited. 2 o'clock. The inspector was scheduled for 2:05, and my phone lay face up on the coffee table like a stopwatch. Screen dark, volume on, no missed calls. Mrs. Chen sat beside me with binoculars in her lap, heavy and old from her late husband's birdwatching days. Her front window faced my porch at the perfect angle. She could see the driveway, the steps, the chrome deadbolt, the place where my suitcase had stood under the buzzing light. "Are you sure you want to watch?" she asked. "I'm sure," I said, not to gloat. To witness the moment my confusion stopped being a family rumor and became an official document. At 2:03, a white sedan turned onto Maple Street and slowed in front of my house. Mrs. Chen lifted the binoculars. "City seal on the door," she murmured. "Reflective vest, clipboard." A man in his 50s got out. Gray hair, careful movements. He didn't rush, didn't smile at the house, didn't carry the jittery energy of a neighbor dropping by. He walked up the steps and knocked. Mrs. Chen narrated in a whisper like she was reading the weather. "She opened," she said. Big smile. I could picture it. My daughter-in-law's practiced smile, the one she used when she wanted people to think she was kind. "He's showing a badge," Mrs. Chen added. Not smiling back. A pause. She's talking, a lot. Hands moving, like she's explaining before he asks. My stomach tightened. I didn't know what my daughter-in-law was saying, but I knew the shape of it. Safety, concern, memory, responsibility. The same story she'd been practicing for months. Then Mrs. Chen's voice went quieter. "He's asking to come in," she said. She stepped aside. "He's inside." I sat with my hands folded in my lap and listened to the clock tick. Every minute felt like another stamp on the file I'd been building in my phone. 3 minutes, 4. Mrs. Chen shifted on the couch. "Side window," she whispered. "He's walking through. She's following. Still talking. He's writing. 6 minutes. Your bedroom," she said, and my throat went dry. "She's at the door. She's trying the knob." A small pause, then a sharper one. "It's locked," Mrs. Chen said. I inhaled slowly through my nose. Relief and anger hit at the same time. "She's trying keys," Mrs. Chen continued. 1, 2, 3. None of them work. Another pause. "He's writing," she said. "A lot. She's talking faster. He's not looking at her." 8 minutes. "Front door now," Mrs. Chen murmured, pointing at the deadbolt, taking pictures. I stared at my phone and felt my pulse steady instead of spike. This was what I'd wanted. Neutral authority, checklist language, photos with timestamps. Mrs. Chen lowered the binoculars for a second, then lifted them again. "He pulled out his phone," Mrs. Chen said. "He's calling someone. He put it on speaker." I leaned forward without realizing it. A clipped voice crackled through the line. "Dispatch, not family." "Records, go ahead," the inspector spoke evenly. "I'm at 847 Maple Street. I need to verify a 911 call tied to this address. Owner reports lockout. Date should be April 18th, early morning." A pause. Keys tapping. "Confirmed," the voice said. "Call received at 1:12 a.m. Caller, homeowner. Notes indicate occupant changed locks and refused entry." Mrs. Chen swallowed. She heard that, she whispered. A beat of silence passed, long enough for the truth to do its work. Then Mrs. Chen said very quietly, she went pale. He wrote something on his clipboard. She went pale. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered on the first ring. Hello? Mrs. Whitmore? A man asked. Yes. This is Inspector Carlyle with the City Housing Department, he said. His tone was professional, not sympathetic, not angry. I just completed the inspection of your property at 847 Maple Street. I'm calling to give you a brief summary. What did you find? I asked. Several issues, he said. First, the primary entry lock was changed without a permit or authorization on file. Second, you do not have access to your bedroom. The current resident could not provide a key or lawful authority to restrict your access. I closed my eyes. My fingers rested flat against the coffee table. And third, he said, I reviewed the 911 call you referenced. The timestamp and your statement on that recording contradict the claim that you left voluntarily. The words landed like a gavel, even though he wasn't a judge. So it's documented, I said. Yes, ma'am, he replied. It's documented. Mrs. Chen watched my face like she was reading subtitles. What happens next? I asked. I'm issuing a citation and an order to correct, he said. The occupant has 10 business days to remove the unauthorized locking mechanism and restore full access to you. If there's no compliance, daily fines begin, and the city can pursue enforcement. Will I get a copy? I asked. Yes, he said. I'll file my report today. A copy will be mailed to you at the address you provided on the request form. The occupant will be served with the citation. I exhaled slowly. Thank you. You did the right thing requesting an inspection, he said. It wasn't warmth, it was procedure. After I ended the call, I told Mrs. Chen what he'd said. Unauthorized lock, no bedroom access, citation, 10 business days, fines. Good, she said, the words small and firm. I called David Brenner next. He answered quickly. Mrs. Whitmore. The inspector completed the visit, I said. Unauthorized locks. My bedroom is inaccessible. He reviewed the 911 recording. He issued a citation. 10 business days. Excellent, he said. Forward the report when it arrives. I'll also request a copy through the city so we're not waiting on mail. What should I expect tomorrow? I asked. You testify, he said. I present the evidence, the 911 recording, the photos, the bank statements, your timeline, and now the inspector's report. Third-party documentation matters. His voice stayed calm, but I could hear satisfaction under it, the way a professional sounds when the facts finally line up. Rest tonight, he said. Meet me at the courthouse at 8:30. When I hung up, I sat back on the couch. The afternoon light slanted across Mrs. Chen's carpet in a warm stripe. I felt tired but not broken, like I'd carried something heavy for years and had finally set it down on a table where other people could see it. My phone buzzed again. My son's name. I hesitated, then answered. Mom? His voice was strained. The city inspector came. Jen said he issued some kind of citation. This is out of hand. It's documented, I said. She was trying to help you, he insisted. You weren't making good decisions. She was worried. She changed the locks, I said. She locked my bedroom. She tried to get me to sign a power of attorney. And now an inspector has photos. He went quiet, then said, smaller, can't we just talk, work it out? I pictured sitting across from my daughter-in-law while she explained away a deadbolt, a forged lease, a doctor that didn't exist. I pictured my son nodding along because it was easier than admitting what he'd allowed. No, I said, I'll see you in court tomorrow. I ended the call before my voice could shake. A minute later, my phone lit up with one last notification. A short voicemail transcription from an unknown number. the inspector leaving a message on the contact number tied to my address, formal and clipped. I didn't need to hear the words to understand what it meant. I looked at Mrs. Chen and felt something steady settle in my chest. The truth had been played out loud on my porch, and when she asked if she could explain, he said no. Friday morning before court, my son showed up at Mrs. Chen's. I heard his car door close outside, then footsteps on the walkway. Mrs. Chen looked through the curtain and didn't move toward the door until I nodded. When she opened it, he stood there empty-handed, like he'd come without a plan. "Mom," he said. I didn't invite him in. I stayed by the living room doorway where he could see me, but not reach me. "You didn't answer my calls," he said. "I was safe," I replied. His eyes flicked to my duffel bag by the couch, then to the notebook on the table. He swallowed. "Jen says you're making this bigger than it is," he said, but the words sounded tired, not convinced. I waited. He tried again, softer. "She thought she was protecting you." "She put my suitcase on the porch at 1 a.m, I said. "She changed the locks. You heard the 911 recording was real. The inspector said it was real." His jaw tightened. He looked down at the carpet like a boy about to confess he'd broken a window. "I knew about the locks," he said. I didn't breathe for a second. "What?" I asked. "She told me she was scheduling a locksmith," he admitted. "She said it was temporary, just to manage the situation." I didn't stop her. The room felt very quiet. Even the refrigerator hums sounded far away. "Why?" I asked. He rubbed his forehead with the heel of his hand. "Because it was easier to believe her than to believe you were being hurt. Because I thought if I stayed neutral, nobody would get angry at me." Neutral. That word tasted like rust. "Court is in an hour," he said. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do there." I looked at him, the man I had raised, the man who had watched his wife take my home piece by piece and called it help. "You choose," I said. "You either tell the truth or you keep protecting her story." His shoulders sagged. Then he said it, as if he was finally hearing himself. "I thought she was trying to help," he said. At 9 a.m., I sat in a courtroom on the 3rd floor of the county building. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, benches that reminded me of church pews. David Brenner sat beside me with a folder thick enough to feel like a shield. My daughter-in-law sat at the opposite table, alone, no attorney. My son sat in the gallery behind her and stared at his hands. The judge was a woman in her 60s, gray hair, reading glasses on a chain. She glanced at the filings, then at me. "Mrs. Whitmore, you're the petitioner?" she asked. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "You're seeking immediate access restoration to 847 Maple Street and an order preventing interference," she asked. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. She turned to the other table. "Miss Whitmore, you're the respondent?" she asked. "Yes," my daughter-in-law said. "Counsel?" the judge asked. "No, Your Honor," she said. The judge looked at Mr. Brenner. "Summarize." Mr. Brenner stood. "Your Honor, my client is the sole owner. The respondent changed locks without authorization and denied the owner access. We have the 911 recording documenting the lockout and a city inspection noting unauthorized locks and restricted bedroom access. We're requesting immediate access and a protective order." The judge turned to my daughter-in-law. "Do you dispute she owns the property?" she asked. "No," she said. "Do you dispute you changed the locks?" the judge asked. A pause. "I did it for her safety," she said. She was forgetful. I was worried she'd wander. "Do you have medical documentation?" the judge asked. "No," my daughter-in-law said, voice thinning. But her son was worried too. The judge's gaze went to my son in the gallery. "Sir, did your mother authorize lock changes?" My son stood slowly. "No, Your Honor," he said. The silence that followed sounded like a door closing. The judge looked back to the bench papers, then up at my daughter-in-law again. Even if you had concerns, you had no legal authority to restrict the owner's access, she said. You did not pursue guardianship. You did not have power of attorney. You changed locks and denied entry. That is an illegal lockout. She signed the order with a firm stroke and handed it to the clerk. Motion granted, she said. Immediate access is ordered. Keys must be provided and access barriers removed within 24 hours. Non-compliance will result in contempt. A protective order is entered prohibiting further lock changes or interference. Effective immediately. My daughter-in-law's face held, but her hands didn't. They gripped the edge of the table like it might steady her. Adjourned, the judge said. Outside the courtroom, Mr. Brenner exhaled once, like he'd been holding it for me. You won, he said. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired in a clean way, like I'd finally stopped carrying something I wasn't meant to carry alone. A deputy met us in the lobby, young, polite. He introduced himself and checked the paperwork. We'll escort you back to the property, he said. At 10:15, we pulled into my driveway. My daughter-in-law's car was there. The deputy knocked. She opened the door without a word and stepped aside. Inside, my house smelled the same. The quiet was different. It didn't feel occupied by someone else's decisions. Ma'am, the keys, the deputy said. My daughter-in-law went to the counter, picked up a key ring, and held it out like a surrender she didn't want to call one. 3 keys. Front deadbolt, back door, my bedroom. Upstairs, I stopped at my bedroom door. The key turned. The door opened. My bed, my dresser, my closet, everything where I left it. The fireproof box sat on the shelf, empty because I'd taken the deed with me. Downstairs, the deputy handed me a card with a reference number. If there's any trouble, call 911 and give them this, he said. When they left, I stood in my living room and listened to footsteps upstairs. My daughter-in-law moving, packing, pulling drawers open and shut. That night, I locked my door from the inside. The next morning, Mr. Brenner called. I drafted a residency agreement, he said. 2 options. 1, you stay, and they vacate within 30 days. 2, you sell, and all proceeds go to you as sole owner. No equity claims, no middle ground. What do I do? I asked. Read it, sign it, I'll file it, he said. Then it's enforceable. I sat at my kitchen table, the same place she'd asked me to sign away my life, and spread out papers that had my name on them and meant it. My daughter-in-law came downstairs with 2 suitcases. She didn't look at me. She carried them to her car. 3 more trips, clothes, boxes, a lamp. On the last trip, she paused in the doorway and looked at me like she wanted one sentence to fix 3 years. I really was trying to help you, she said. I didn't answer. I didn't argue. I just watched her go. She moved out 3 days later. I signed option 2. I could have stayed. The house was mine, legally, on paper, in every way that mattered. But I didn't want to. The walls felt heavy, like they remembered too much. I didn't want to win and still live inside the place where I'd been made small. On Tuesday morning, I called a realtor. By Friday, there was a sign in my yard. 2 weekends of showings. A young couple came through with a baby in a carrier, bouncing gently against the mother's chest. They stood in the doorway of what used to be my dining room and whispered about where they'd put a high chair. 2 weeks later, I signed the closing documents myself. My hand was steady. Mrs. Chen drove me to the title office. She sat beside me in the waiting room, her purse in her lap, like she was keeping watch without making a fuss. When the papers were done, she didn't say, "I told you so." She just said softly, "You did it." I moved into a senior apartment 3 miles from her. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, a balcony on the 2nd floor. a security door at the entrance, and a front desk that knew my name. The first night I slept there, I listened to the hallway go quiet and realized no one could turn a key in my lock unless I allowed it. No one had a key to my apartment except me. Management gave me 2 sets. I kept both. One stayed on my key ring, one stayed in a drawer. I didn't give a spare to anyone. Not to be dramatic, not to punish anyone, just because I didn't have to. The next week, I went to my bank in person. I asked for 2-factor authentication. I changed every password. I added a verbal passphrase on my account, something only I would know. I updated my mailing address and requested that statements be sent to my locked box, not handed to anyone helpful at a front door. My alerts came back, one clean notification at a time. Every transaction, every login, every change. I checked them with my morning coffee, the way I used to check my books when I was working. I watered my own plants now. 3 pots on the balcony, tomatoes, basil, rosemary. Every evening at 6, I filled a small watering can and watched the soil darken as it drank. No one asked permission. No one told me I was doing it wrong. No one took the can from my hands and said they'd handle it. It was quiet here, peaceful, the kind of peace that comes from knowing exactly what's yours and exactly who has access to your life. My son called once a month. I told him I was fine. He asked to meet for lunch. I said maybe next time. I never said yes, maybe someday, not yet. Some nights I sat on my balcony and watched the park lights blink on. I drank tea, I read books. I existed in a space that was entirely mine. I chose this. That mattered. 6 months later, Mrs. Chen told me she'd seen my son at the grocery store. He and my daughter-in-law were still together. Smaller apartment, tighter smiles. He didn't ask about me. That weekend, I sent another birthday card to my grandson. No return address, just love Grandma. He's 7 now. I hope he remembers the love, not the chaos. I learned something between the suitcase on the porch and the keys in my hand. Justice isn't loud. It's documentation. It's knowing your rights. It's calling 911, even when your voice wants to shake. The recording didn't lie. The inspector's report didn't lie. The court order didn't lie. The system worked because I finally gave it something to work with. If you've ever felt locked out of your own life, if someone's taking pieces of you and calling it help, keep your receipts. Protect your keys. And don't hesitate to ask for help. If this resonated, share it with someone who needs it.